Was Atlantis real or just a myth? For over 2,000 years, this question has captivated explorers, scholars, and dreamers alike. Picture a magnificent city, gleaming with advanced technology, its streets lined with gold, its people unmatched in wisdom. Then, in a single day and night, swallowed by the sea without a trace. This is the story Plato shared in his ancient dialogues, the tale of Atlantis, a civilization so powerful and so mysterious that its very existence has been debated for centuries. But why does this story still haunt us? Why do we keep searching for an island that may have never existed? The answer lies in the details, tiny, tantalizing clues buried in ancient texts, hidden in geological formations, and whispered in the echoes of lost cultures. Today, we're diving deep into the legend, uncovering 30 puzzling details that keep historians and archaeologists awake at night. Plato's account of Atlantis isn't just a story, it's a riddle wrapped in a mystery. He described it as a utopia, a paradise beyond compare, ruled by wise kings and blessed by the gods. But he also painted it as a warning, a civilization brought low by its own arrogance, punished for its greed. The strangest part, Plato insisted it was true, a tale passed down from Egyptian priests to the Greek lawmaker Solon. Yet no physical evidence of Atlantis has ever been found. No ruins, no artifacts, no definitive proof. So why do so many still believe? Is it because the idea of a lost, advanced civilization speaks to something deep within us, a longing for forgotten glory, a hope that secrets of the past are still waiting to be uncovered? Or is there something more, hidden in the gaps of history, waiting to be pieced together? From the eerie similarities between Atlantis and other ancient flood myths to the bizarre geological formations that some claim match Plato's descriptions, the clues are everywhere if you know where to look. Some researchers point to the island of Santorini, where a cataclysmic volcanic eruption wiped out an entire Bronze Age culture. Others argue for locations as far-flung as the Caribbean or even Antarctica. And then there are the underwater structures, strange, seemingly man-made formations discovered off the coasts of Japan, Cuba, and beyond. Could one of these be the fabled city, or is Atlantis something else entirely, a metaphor, a cautionary tale, or even a misunderstood memory of a long-lost civilization? Over the next 30 details, we'll examine the evidence, weigh the theories, and maybe, just maybe, get closer to unraveling one of history's greatest enigmas. So, are you ready to step into the mystery? Let's begin. Plato's account of Atlantis comes to us from just two of his works, the dialogues Timaeus and Critias. These writings aren't just philosophical musings, they're detailed, almost journalistic in their precision. He describes Atlantis as a mighty naval power, a civilization of unparalleled sophistication, lying beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. According to Plato, this was no ordinary island. It was a concentric ring of land and water, a marvel of engineering with grand palaces, sprawling harbors, and temples plated in gold. The people of Atlantis were said to possess knowledge and technology far ahead of their time, ruled by a lineage of wise kings descended from the god Poseidon himself. But then came their downfall. Corrupted by greed and ambition, they waged war against Athens, a war they lost, and as punishment, the gods unleashed a cataclysm so devastating that Atlantis sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of fire and earthquakes. What makes Plato's story so fascinating isn't just the drama, it's the specifics. He didn't just say Atlantis was destroyed. He gave exact measurements, describing the island as larger than Libya and Asia combined. He placed its destruction around 9,000 years before his own time, roughly 11,000 years ago from today. He even named the source of his tale, an Egyptian priest who told the Athenian lawmaker Solon that Atlantis was real, a lost chapter in human history. And that's where the mystery deepens. Plato wasn't known for writing pure fiction. His other works explored philosophy, politics, and ethics through allegory, but he presented Atlantis as historical fact. So was he blending myth with reality? Was he embellishing a true event or crafting a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, the strangest detail of all? The sheer plausibility of his geography. Plato wrote of mountains to the north of Atlantis, rich in metals, and a great plain to the south, fertile and well-irrigated, details that match real-world locations like the Iberian Peninsula. The description of concentric rings of land and water has led some to compare it to modern-day Santorini, where the Minoan civilization was wiped out by a volcanic eruption around 1600 BC. But Santorini is far too small and the timeline doesn't match. Others argue Plato's 9,000 years was a mistranslation, a scribble error that shifted the date. Could he have been describing a real but misremembered disaster passed down through generations of oral tradition? Or was Atlantis always meant to be a myth, a glittering mirage of what happens when power goes unchecked? The answers might lie in the next details, hidden in the shadows of history. The hunt for Atlantis has taken explorers to every corner of the globe, from sunken ruins in the Mediterranean to bizarre geological formations in the Sahara. But why is pinning down its location so frustratingly difficult? Plato's clue that Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules should have narrowed it down. The ancient Greeks knew these pillars as the Strait of Gibraltar, the gateway between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. But here's the catch: over centuries, interpretations of that phrase have spiraled into wild contradictions. Some argue Plato meant just outside the Mediterranean, pointing to spots like the Azores or the Canary Islands. Others insist beyond could mean anywhere in the vast Atlantic, even as far as the Caribbean. And then there's the camp that believes Plato's directions were symbolic, that Atlantis wasn't a physical place at all, but a moral lesson disguised as geography. One of the most compelling candidates lies much closer to home, the island of Santorini, around 1600 BC. A volcanic eruption obliterated the Minoan civilization there, leaving behind a caldera eerily similar to Plato's rings of land and water. The disaster was cataclysmic: tsunamis, ash clouds, entire cities buried. It's easy to see how such an event could morph into legend over generations. But skeptics pounce on the timeline. Plato dated Atlantis's destruction to 11,000 years ago, while Santorini's eruption was a mere 36 centuries back. Could this discrepancy be a scribble error, or did Plato intentionally stretch the timeline to make Atlantis feel more ancient, more mythic? Then there's the Richat structure in Mauritania, a sprawling, eye-shaped formation in the Sahara Desert. From above, its concentric rings mirror Plato's description so perfectly it's uncanny. Proponents argue that climate shifts turned a once lush region into desert, swallowing Atlantis beneath the sands instead of the sea. But here's the problem: the Richat isn't man-made. It's a natural geological formation with no evidence of advanced ruins or sudden destruction. Still, the resemblance keeps theorists hooked, suggesting Plato might have blended real landscapes with fictional lore. Theories grow even wilder further afield. Some point to underwater structures off the coast of Cuba, where sonar has revealed what appear to be massive stone formations half a mile below the surface. Others whisper about Antarctica, arguing that ancient maps depicting ice-free coastlines hint at a lost civilization buried under millennia of snow. But without physical proof, these remain tantalizing maybes. What if the confusion over Atlantis's location isn't just about geography, but memory? Civilizations rise and fall, coastlines shift, and oral traditions warp over time. Could Atlantis be a scrambled recollection of multiple disasters, a fusion of Santorini's fury, the Richat symmetry, and half-remembered tales of sea peoples invading ancient Egypt? The more we search, the clearer it becomes. Atlantis isn't just a place, It's a mirror reflecting our obsession with the idea that somewhere, just beyond the edges of history, lies proof that we're not the first and won't be the last to reach for greatness. Plato didn't just describe Atlantis as a wealthy empire, he painted it as a technological marvel, a civilization so advanced it borders on science fiction. Among the most jaw-dropping details, the Atlanteans allegedly harnessed mysterious energy sources, including colossal crystals capable of powering their entire city. These weren't just decorative, they supposedly channeled energy from the sun, storing it like batteries to illuminate streets, heat homes, and even fuel their machines. Sound familiar? It's uncannily close to modern solar technology, raising the eerie question: was Plato describing a real innovation lost to time, or was his imagination centuries ahead of its time? Even more astonishing are the hints of flying machines. Ancient texts describe Atlantean vessels soaring through the air, defying the laws of gravity as we understand them. While Plato's accounts are vague, other cultures tell strikingly similar stories. Take the Hindu Vimana's mythical aircraft detailed in Sanskrit epics, complete with intricate designs and alleged anti-gravity propulsion. The parallels are hard to ignore. Could these stories be distorted memories of actual technology, or do they reveal a universal human fascination with flight projected onto legendary civilizations? Skeptics argue these tales are pure myth, but fringe theorists propose a wilder idea: that Atlantis, like other ancient cultures, might have had extraterrestrial contact. The idea of ancient astronauts resurfaces here, suggesting advanced knowledge was gifted or stolen from beings not of this world. Then there's the matter of their architecture. Plato described Atlantis's capital as a masterpiece of engineering, with towering structures built from a mysterious alloy stronger than bronze, possibly resembling modern steel or even titanium. The precision of their construction, massive stone blocks fitted seamlessly without mortar mirrors techniques found in pyramids and megalithic sites worldwide. How could a civilization from 11,000 years ago achieve such feats? Mainstream archaeology insists these claims are fantastical, but alternative researchers point to anomalies like the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old Greek device considered the world's first analog computer. If such technology existed in classical antiquity, could an even older civilization have surpassed it? The most haunting possibility is that Atlantis's technology led to its downfall. Plato hints that their advancements bred arrogance, tempting them to play God. Some interpret this as a warning about unchecked innovation, an ancient echo of our own fears about artificial intelligence or nuclear power. Whether Atlantis was real or not, its story forces us to confront a timeless dilemma. How much knowledge is too much? And if such a civilization did exist, did it vanish because it reached too far, too fast? The ruins, if they're out there, might hold the answer. Until then, these fragments of lost tech keep the legend alive, blurring the line between history and imagination. Plato's description of Atlantis's destruction feels ripped from a disaster movie: earthquakes shattering the land, floods swallowing cities whole, an entire civilization vanishing in 24 hours. But could such an abrupt cataclysm actually happen? Geologists point to real events that mirror Atlantis's fate with unsettling precision. Take the Storegga slide, a massive underwater landslide off Norway's coast around 8,000 years ago. Triggered by melting glaciers, it sent towering tsunamis racing across the North Sea, devastating coastal settlements from Scotland to Denmark. Entire communities would have been wiped out in moments, their existence erased beneath the waves. Then there's the Thara eruption, the blast that obliterated Santorini around 1600 BC. The explosion was so powerful it's been compared to 40 atomic bombs, spawning tsunamis that crushed Minoan ports on Crete, 80 miles away. Ash blotted out the sun for weeks, and the island's center collapsed into the sea, leaving a smoldering caldera. The terrifying truth: both events prove Plato's timeline isn't pure fantasy. Natural disasters can erase civilizations overnight, but here's the catch: neither matches Atlantis' supposed scale. The Storegga slide affected northern Europe, not the Atlantic, and Thera's destruction was regional, not global. So why do these parallels matter? Because they reveal how myths are born. Oral histories compress time and exaggerate details. A local tsunami becomes a worldwide flood over generations of retelling. Thera's eruption might have inspired Egyptian priests whose stories reached Solon, warping into the Atlantis legend centuries later. Yet the biggest enigma remains: if Atlantis was real, why no physical trace? Skeptics argue that 11,000 years is too long. Any ruins would have eroded or been buried under sediment. But consider Doggerland, the vast Mesolithic landmass now submerged beneath the North Sea. Archaeologists have found tools, bones, and even footprints preserved on its drowned plains, proving some evidence survives millennia underwater. So why not Atlantis? The grim answer might lie in geology's ruthlessness. Thera's eruption buried Akrotiri under 60 feet of pumice, perfectly preserving frescoes and buildings like a Bronze Age Pompeii. But not all disasters are so tidy. Tsunamis scatter debris, earthquakes pulverize stone, and shifting seafloors swallow cities whole. If Atlantis sat on a tectonic fault or unstable coastal shelf, its remnants could be scattered across miles of ocean floor, hidden under layers of sand and time. This raises a darker question: how many other Atlantises are out there? From the sunken Yonaguni structures off Japan to Cambodia's legendary city of Ko Ker, lost civilizations keep emerging from the shadows. Each discovery chips away at the idea that advanced cultures couldn't have existed before recorded history. Maybe Atlantis isn't one place but many, a collective memory of societies that rose, thrived, and were crushed by the planet's indifference. The real mystery isn't whether Atlantis sank, it's whether we're listening to the whispers of the past or just hearing what we want to believe. Plato's claim that Egyptian priests told Solon about Atlantis adds a layer of intrigue and confusion to the legend. If this grand civilization was common knowledge among Egyptian scholars, why is there not a single surviving hieroglyph or papyrus that mentions it by name? Egypt's records are meticulous, documenting everything from grain harvests to foreign wars. The absence of Atlantis in their archives is deafening, but here's where things get interesting. Some scholars argue that Plato wasn't chronicling history, he was crafting a political allegory disguised as one. The story of a powerful nation brought low by its own decadence would have resonated with Athenians wary of imperial overreach, especially after their bruising wars with Sparta. By framing it as an ancient Egyptian warning, Plato lent his tale weight, borrowing the prestige of Egypt's mystique to sell his cautionary message. Yet the Egyptian connection isn't so easily dismissed. Dig deeper and you'll find eerie overlaps between Atlantis' demise and Egypt's own myths of cyclical destruction. The Egyptians believed in Zep Tepi, a first time when gods ruled the earth, followed by periodic cataclysms that reset civilization. The Book of the Dead describes a great flood purging humanity for its sins, mirroring Atlantis' punishment. Even the layout of Atlantis, concentric rings of water and land, echoes Egyptian symbolism. The Ogdoas, their cosmic diagram of creation, depicts the primordial mound rising from swirling waters, much like Plato's island. Could these similarities mean Atlantis was inspired by Egyptian cosmology, or did both cultures inherit fragments of an older, shared memory? One theory suggests Atlantis wasn't a physical place but a corrupted retelling of the Sea People's invasion, a confederation of raiders who nearly toppled Egypt around 1200 BC. See, their origins were mysterious, their attacks sudden and devastating. Egyptian inscriptions describe them as coming from the sea, much like Atlantis' aggressors. Over centuries, oral traditions might have warped these invaders into a lost civilization. But why would Plato or his Egyptian sources exaggerate them into a utopia? Perhaps because myths thrive on contradiction. The same culture that terrifies in one era becomes romanticized in another, its brutality softened by time. The most tantalizing clue lies in the Temple of Edfu, where walls depict a homeland of the primeval ones destroyed by flood. Some researchers claim this is a distorted reference to Atlantis, though mainstream Egyptology dismisses it as allegory. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Ancient cultures didn't separate history and myth the way we do. A story could be both symbolic and rooted in real events, its details blurred like reflections in the Nile. If Atlantis was ever real, the Egyptians might not have called it by that name, but the echoes of its downfall could linger in their texts, waiting for someone to piece them together. Until then, the silence of the record speaks louder than words. Plato's claim that Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia combined is one of the most baffling details in his account. To put that in perspective, ancient Libya referred roughly to North Africa, and Asia meant modern-day Turkey and the Middle East. Combined, that's a landmass spanning millions of square miles, far larger than any island in recorded history. So was Plato exaggerating, or could there be another explanation? Some scholars argue this was deliberate hyperbole, a way to emphasize Atlantis's dominance rather than its literal size. Ancient cultures often used grand scale to convey power. Think of the Bible's 40 days and 40 nights, or Sumerian kings ruling for tens of thousands of years. Numbers weren't always meant to be taken at face value but to inspire awe. Yet another possibility is mistranslation. The Greek word Plato used, meson, can mean greater in terms of influence, not just physical size. Could Atlantis have been more powerful than Libya and Asia rather than bigger? This interpretation aligns with his description of its naval empire, which allegedly conquered lands as far as Egypt and Italy. But even then, the idea of a single island nation dominating continents strains credibility. Unless, of course, we consider that Plato's island might not have been an island at all. Here's where geology throws a curveball. 11,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower. Vast stretches of land now underwater, like the Dogger Bank in the North Sea or the Sunda Shelf in Southeast Asia, were once habitable. Could Atlantis have been part of a larger continental shelf, a peninsula or coastal plain later swallowed by rising seas? The Azores Plateau, a submerged landmass in the Atlantic, fits this idea. Satellite scans reveal what appear to be stepped pyramids and roads under miles of water, though mainstream science dismisses these as natural formations. Still, if Atlantis was a remnant of Ice Age geography, its size might reflect a lost world we're only beginning to map. The most provocative theory ties Atlantis to ancient flood myths. From the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the Indian Matsya Purana, cultures worldwide describe a cataclysm drowning advanced civilizations. Many of these stories share eerie similarities: divine punishment, survivor warnings, and lands beyond the horizon that vanish beneath the waves. The Babylonian Atrahasis tablet even mentions a city, like a mountain, destroyed by the gods, echoing Plato's concentric rings. Could these tales be fragments of a collective memory distorted over millennia? If so, Atlantis might not be a single place but a mosaic of disasters, its size inflated by layers of oral tradition. The debate boils down to this: was Plato describing a real place with poetic license, or crafting a metaphor for human hubris? The answer might lie in between. Ancient writers blended fact and allegory seamlessly, leaving us to untangle where history ends and myth begins. Whether Atlantis was a continent or a cautionary tale, its enduring mystery reminds us how easily the past can slip through our fingers, lost beneath the tides of time. Plato's description of Atlantis's capital city is so precise it feels like he's guiding us through its streets. At its heart stood a grand citadel surrounded by concentric rings, alternating bands of land and water connected by bridges and tunnels. The outermost ring, he claimed, measured nearly 12 miles in diameter, a staggering feat of engineering for any ancient civilization. These weren't just decorative moats, they served as defensive barriers, transportation canals, and perhaps even spiritual symbols. The design was both practical and mystical, a perfect marriage of function and meaning. But here's what's fascinating: this blueprint wasn't purely fictional. Ancient cities like Carthage employed similar circular layouts, with harbors and walls arranged in rings to maximize trade and security. Even older, the Mesopotamian city of Dur-Sharrukin featured a radial plan, its streets radiating outward like spokes from a royal center. Could Plato have drawn inspiration from real urban designs, embellishing them into an idealized vision? The circular motif goes deeper than architecture. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, mandala's intricate circular patterns represent cosmic order and harmony, mirroring Atlantis's rings as a microcosm of the universe. The symbolism is undeniable, a city built in perfect balance, echoing the cycles of nature. Later utopian writers seized this idea. Thomas More's Utopia depicted an island city with geometric precision, while H.G. Wells imagined futuristic metropolises with radial symmetry. Even modern urban planners like Le Corbusier championed circular designs for their efficiency and egalitarianism. The allure of the circle endures because it suggests unity, a world where everything has its place. Yet Atlantis's design also hints at something darker. Those concentric rings weren't just beautiful, they were fortifications. Plato described canals wide enough to block invaders, tunnels that could be flooded in an emergency. This wasn't just a utopia, it was a fortress, a reflection of Atlantis's paranoia as much as its grandeur. The same rings that symbolized harmony also trapped its people, cutting them off from the outside world. In the end, their perfect city became a prison, collapsing under the weight of its own isolation. The lesson is stark: even the most brilliant designs can't save a society from its flaws. So was Atlantis's circular layout pure invention, or a distorted memory of real cities lost to time? The answer might lie in the mudflats of Spain's Doñana National Park, where archaeologists have uncovered remains of a Bronze Age settlement with concentric earthworks. Or in the underwater ruins of Japan's Yonaguni, where stepped platforms resemble Plato's descriptions. Neither is a perfect match, but they prove that the idea of ringed cities wasn't just fantasy. Whether inspired by reality or imagination, Atlantis's design remains a haunting blueprint, a reminder that human ambition always seeks order, even as chaos waits to undo it. At the heart of Atlantis's legend lies a love story, one that blurs the line between myth and geology. According to Plato, the island was a divine gift from Poseidon to his mortal lover, Plato. The sea god carved Atlantis into concentric rings, shielding their home at the center, where he fathered 5 sets of twins who would become its first kings. This origin tale isn't just romantic flourish, it's a blueprint for how ancient cultures explained the unexplainable. The marriage of God and mortal mirrors creation myths worldwide, from Sumer's Inki gifting civilization to humanity to the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl stealing fire for mankind. But Poseidon's role is particularly telling. As the god of earthquakes and oceans, his shaping of Atlantis mirrors the very forces that might have destroyed it: earthquakes fracturing land into rings, tsunamis carving channels. Could this myth be a poetic retelling of natural disasters that reshaped coastlines? The parallels to flood myths are impossible to ignore. In the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, the gods send a deluge to punish humanity, sparing only Utnapishtim, who builds an ark. The Hindu Matsya Purana tells of Manu, saved by a fish avatar of Vishnu before a world-engulfing flood. Even the Bible's Noah shares eerie similarities with Plato's timeline, both catastrophes resetting civilization around 11,000 years ago. These stories aren't coincidences, they're cultural memories of real events. Geologists confirm that meltwater pulses at the end of the last ice age caused sea levels to rise hundreds of feet, swallowing coastal settlements globally. For ancient peoples, these disasters weren't just whether they were divine wrath. Poseidon's rage fits the pattern, his love for Plato perhaps symbolizing humanity's fragile alliance with nature, one that could be revoked at any moment. The twins born to Poseidon and Plato add another layer. 10 kings ruling jointly reflects a common motif in ancient governance, the duality of power, like Sparta's twin kings or Rome's consuls. But 5 pairs also hints at something deeper, the fragmentation of a unified society. In Celtic myth, the god Lud divides Britain among his sons, leading to strife. Greek legends often warn of sibling rivalry, from Atreus and Thyestes to Romulus and Remus. Plato's Atlantean kings started as wise rulers, but over generations their divine blood diluted into greed. This echoes real Bronze Age collapses, where interconnected empires from the Hittites to the Mycenaeans fell like dominoes, their leaders too proud to adapt. Poseidon's legacy, then, isn't just a city, it's a cycle. Creation and destruction, love and wrath, all bound together like the rings of Atlantis itself. The most haunting question isn't whether Poseidon existed, but why this story resonated across cultures. Perhaps because it captures a truth deeper than history, that civilizations like islands are born from chaos and can be reclaimed by it in an instant. Whether carved by gods or tectonic plates, the message is the same: human ambition is no match for the forces that shape our world. Atlantis's rings weren't just walls, they were a mirror, reflecting our own fragile place between the tides of time. Plato's tale of Atlantis wasn't just about a doomed island, it was about an empire. He claimed the Atlanteans didn't merely bask in their own splendor, they launched a campaign of conquest, sweeping across Europe and Africa until they reached Athens. This wasn't a minor skirmish. According to Plato, Atlantis fielded a massive army, backed by advanced technology and divine favor, yet the Athenians, against all odds, repelled them. The victory was short-lived, though. Shortly after, earthquakes and floods swallowed Atlantis whole, while Athens itself was ravaged by the same cataclysm. But here's the glaring hole in the story. If Athens truly defeated such a formidable foe, why is there no record of it outside Plato's dialogues? No Athenian chronicles, no triumphant inscriptions, not even a passing mention in other Greek texts. This silence raises 2 possibilities. Either Plato fabricated the entire conflict as part of his allegory, or he was tapping into a deeper, half-remembered history. Let's start with the first option. Plato lived during a time when Athens was reeling from military defeats and political turmoil. His story of a virtuous Athens humbling a decadent superpower might have been pure propaganda, a moral fable about the dangers of imperialism and the resilience of democracy. After all, his other works, like the Republic, used fictional scenarios to explore ideals of governance. But if that's the case, why set the story 9,000 years in the past? Why involve Atlantis at all? The second possibility is far more tantalizing. Could Plato's account be a distorted echo of real Bronze Age chaos around 1200 BC? Civilizations across the Mediterranean collapsed in a wave of invasions, natural disasters, and social upheaval. The so-called Sea Peoples, mysterious raiders documented in Egyptian records, sacked cities from Anatolia to the Nile Delta. Some scholars speculate these marauders were displaced populations, victims of famine or volcanic eruptions, lashing out in desperation. Sound familiar? A powerful seafaring nation striking without warning, only to vanish from history. The parallels to Atlantis are striking, but there's another twist. Ancient Athens at the time Plato described would have been a backwater, barely more than a village. It couldn't have repelled a paper boat, let alone a naval superpower. Unless, of course, Athens wasn't referring to the city itself, but to its ancestors, the Mycenaean Greeks, who did clash with maritime invaders. Mycenaean records are scarce, but their fortified palaces and warrior tombs suggest a culture familiar with war. If Atlantis' assault mirrored the Sea People's raids, could later Greeks have merged these events into a single, mythic confrontation? The most provocative clue lies in Egypt. The pharaoh Ramses III claimed victory over the Sea Peoples, boasting of their defeat in elaborate temple carvings. But here's the catch: those same carvings depict the invaders wearing horned helmets, a style never found in the Aegean. Some theorists argue this proves the Sea Peoples came from farther afield, perhaps from beyond the Pillars of Hercules, where Atlantis allegedly lay. It's a stretch, but not impossible. Cultures misremember details over centuries, blending fact and folklore until the lines blur. So was Atlantis' war with Athens pure fiction, or a fractured memory of Bronze Age collapse? The answer might lie in the gaps, the missing records, the ambiguous archaeology, the way civilizations rewrite their pasts to make sense of their present. Plato's story endures because it straddles that line, offering both a warning and a mystery. Whether allegory or accident of history, it forces us to ask, how many other empires have risen, conquered, and vanished, leaving only whispers behind? Plato didn't just tell the story of Atlantis to entertain, he used it as a warning. The island's destruction wasn't framed as random misfortune, but as divine retribution for moral decay. The Atlanteans, once noble and wise, grew corrupted by their own power, their hearts hardened by greed and ambition. This wasn't unique to Atlantis. It's a theme woven through Plato's other works, especially The Republic, where he argues that societies crumble when rulers prioritize wealth over wisdom. The parallels are striking. In The Republic, he describes the descent from an ideal state into tyranny, a path paved by unchecked desire. Atlantis embodies this downfall, a utopia turned dystopia, its rings of water now serving as a prison of its own making. The moral isn't subtle. Plato's Atlantis is a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting a truth as old as civilization itself. Greatness invites hubris, and hubris invites ruin. This idea echoes through countless myths. Take Sodom, the biblical city obliterated for its wickedness, its people so consumed by indulgence they ignored divine warnings. Or Icarus, whose wax wings melted when he flew too close to the sun, a metaphor for ambition outstripping wisdom. Even the Norse myth of Ragnarok follows this arc, where the god's own flaws trigger the end of the world. These stories aren't coincidences, they're cultural survival guides, coded reminders that prosperity without virtue is a ticking clock. What makes Plato's version so compelling is its specificity. He didn't just say Atlantis fell, he chronicled its decay. The kings, once chosen for their wisdom, began exploiting their subjects. The people, once united, fractured into factions. Temples became monuments to vanity, and the pursuit of knowledge gave way to the pursuit of conquest. Sound familiar? It's the same spiral historians trace in Rome's decline, where military overreach and political corruption hollowed out an empire. Or closer to home, the cautionary tales of Wall Street excess or Silicon Valleys, move fast and break things, ethos. The names and technologies change, but the pattern remains. Yet there's a twist in Plato's telling. Unlike Sodom, which was wiped out with no survivors, or Icarus, who perished alone, Atlantis' destruction was collective. Its fate wasn't just a punishment, it was a reset. The gods didn't merely erase the island, they erased the memory of it, leaving only fragments in priestly records. This raises a chilling question. Are we, like the Atlanteans, doomed to repeat history because we've forgotten the lessons of the past? The answer might lie in how we tell these stories today. Modern dystopias, from Mad Max to Black Mirror, still wrestle with Plato's core dilemma. Can humanity wield power without self-destructing? Atlantis endures because it's not just about a lost city, it's about the fragility of civilization itself. Every time we ignore inequality, glorify excess, or prioritize progress over ethics, we're dancing on the same tightrope. The difference is, Plato's warning came with a roadmap. In the Republic, he proposed a solution: philosopher kings, rulers trained in wisdom rather than war. Atlantis is the nightmare, the Republic is the antidote. So was Atlantis's fall a moral lesson or a prophecy? Perhaps both. Myths don't just explain the past, they anticipate the future. And in an age of climate crises and AI ethics, the story feels less like ancient history and more like a flashing red light. The real mystery isn't whether Atlantis sank, it's whether we'll heed its lesson before our own rings of water close in around us. In the late 19th century, a Minnesota politician turned amateur historian single-handedly reignited global fascination with Atlantis, and his name was Ignatius Donnelly. His book Atlantis, The Antediluvian World wasn't just a bestseller. It became the foundation for modern Atlantean pseudoscience, blending shaky archaeology with wild conjecture. Donnelly's central claim, that Atlantis wasn't merely a lost island, but the mother civilization behind every major ancient culture, from the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of Central America. He argued that flood myths found in dozens of cultures weren't coincidences, but shared memories of Atlantis's destruction. The Greeks, the Maya, the Hindus, all supposedly descended from Atlantean survivors who spread their knowledge after the cataclysm. At first glance, Donnelly's enthusiasm was infectious. He compiled lists of cultural parallels, pyramids on opposite sides of the Atlantic, similar-sounding words for sun in unrelated languages, even matching folk tales about great floods. But his methodology was deeply flawed. He cherry-picked evidence while ignoring contradictions, like the fact that Egyptian and Mesoamerican pyramids served entirely different purposes, tombs versus temples. Linguists dismantled his phonetic comparisons as pure coincidence, and geologists pointed out that sea level rise didn't happen overnight, as Plato's story implied. Yet Donnelly's sheer audacity captured imaginations. His book read like a detective story, piecing together a lost world from scattered clues, even if those clues were often misinterpreted or outright fabricated. The ripple effects of Donnelly's theories can't be overstated. He gave Atlantis a veneer of academic respectability, inspiring generations of writers, mystics, and conspiracy theorists. Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, wove Donnelly's ideas into her esoteric cosmology, claiming Atlanteans possessed psychic powers. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, channeled visions of Atlantis as a high-tech utopia with crystal-powered flying machines, ideas that still permeate New Age circles today. Even mainstream pop culture owes Donnelly a debt. Comic books, films like Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and video games Assassin's Creed Odyssey all borrow from his global progenitor civilization trope. But here's the irony: Donnelly's greatest contribution might have been unintentional. By pushing Atlantis into pseudoscience's fringe, he forced academics to engage with flood myths and cultural diffusion more seriously. Scholars like James Fraser and Joseph Campbell later explored how similar myths arise independently in isolated cultures, not because of a shared ancestor, but because humans naturally explain earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions through storytelling. The real lesson of Donnelly's Atlantis isn't about a lost continent, but about how easily we project our desires onto the past, reshaping ambiguity into grand narratives. His legacy isn't a map to Atlantis, it's a mirror, reflecting our timeless hunger for origins, for connection, for a golden age just beyond the horizon of memory. Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet, took the legend of Atlantis and spun it into something even stranger, a vision of psychic powers, futuristic technology, and an impending resurrection. While unconscious in self-induced trances, Cayce delivered over 700 readings about Atlantis, describing it as a hyper-advanced civilization destroyed by misuse of a mysterious energy crystal. His followers hung on every word, especially his prediction that Atlantis would rise again near Bimini in the late 1960s, when divers discovered a bizarre underwater rock formation off Bimini's coast in 1968. a half-mile-long line of rectangular stones dubbed the Bimini Road. Case's devotees declared it proof. Here, they claimed, were the ruins of Atlantis's harbors, just as he'd foreseen. Scientists, however, weren't convinced. Geologists examined the Bimini Road and concluded it was a textbook example of beach rock, a natural formation where fractured limestone settles into neat, block-like shapes due to tidal erosion. The road lacked any tool marks, mortar, or artifacts, and its arrangement bore no resemblance to man-made structures. Even the timing was off. Case had predicted Atlantis's re-emergence in 1968 or 69, but the rocks were already documented on nautical charts from the early 20th century. Yet the allure of Case's vision persisted, fueled by deeper desires. His Atlantis wasn't just a lost city, it was a spiritual beacon, a place where humans wielded godlike powers through crystals and telepathy. That narrative resonated with the burgeoning New Age movement, which blended mysticism with a distrust of mainstream science. Case's influence seeped into unexpected corners. His descriptions of Atlantean healing crystals inspired today's wellness industry, where shops sell energy-charged stones claiming lineage to the lost civilization. Conspiracy theorists latched onto his warnings of Atlantean hubris, framing modern technology as a repeat of their downfall. Even Hollywood borrowed his tropes, from the crystal-powered submarines in Atlantis, the lost empire, to the psychic archaeology of Indiana Jones. The irony: Case himself was a humble man, a devout Christian who saw his visions as divine messages, not pseudoscientific dogma. He never profited from the Atlantis mythos, yet his name became synonymous with its most extravagant retellings. The Bimini Road debacle reveals a timeless tension between the need for mystery and the rigor of evidence. Case's followers didn't just want Atlantis found, they wanted it remembered as he described it, a mirror for our own hopes and fears about progress, power, and spiritual decay. The rocks near Bimini may be ordinary, but the dreams they ignited are anything but. Whether prophecy or projection, Case's Atlantis endures because it asks the same question Plato did. Are we destined to repeat the past, or can we learn from its echoes? The island of Santorini, with its whitewashed villages perched atop volcanic cliffs, hides a secret beneath its stunning beauty, a cataclysm so immense it might have inspired Plato's Atlantis. Around 1600 BC, the volcano at its heart erupted with a force estimated at 4 times that of Krakatoa, obliterating the thriving Minoan settlements on the island and sending tsunamis racing across the Aegean. The Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization, were master sailors, artists, and engineers, their cities adorned with vivid frescoes and labyrinthine palaces. To many researchers, this sounds eerily familiar. Could the Minoan civilization, swallowed by the sea in a single fiery night, be the real Atlantis? The parallels are striking. Plato described Atlantis as a naval power with sophisticated architecture and a love for bull worship, an uncanny match for the Minoans. Their frescoes at Knossos depict acrobats leaping over charging bulls, a ritual possibly linked to their reverence for the animal. Even the layout of Akrotiri, a Minoan town preserved under volcanic ash on Santorini, echoes Plato's rings of land and water with its circular harbor and terraced buildings. Unlike Plato's utopia, however, the Minoans left behind physical proof, golden artifacts, intricate pottery, and even advanced plumbing systems that rivaled Rome's centuries later. But the timeline doesn't quite fit. Plato placed Atlantis's destruction around 9,000 years before his time, while Santorini's eruption was a mere 3,600 years ago. Some scholars suggest this discrepancy stems from a mistranslation, that Solon, hearing the story from Egyptian priests, misread their hieroglyphs, converting 900 years into 9,000. Others argue Plato intentionally exaggerated the date to lend Atlantis an air of mythic antiquity. Either way, the gap is hard to ignore. Then there's the scale. Santorini was a regional power, not the globe-spanning empire Plato described. The eruption devastated Crete 80 miles south, but Egypt and Athens, both mentioned in the Atlantis tale, were untouched by tsunamis or ash. Still, disasters ripple through memory in unexpected ways. The Minoans traded as far as Spain and Syria, spreading their influence. Could their sudden disappearance have morphed into legends of a greater civilization lost to the sea? The haunting frescoes of Akrotiri offer a clue. Unlike Pompeii's chaotic scenes of panic, these paintings show serene daily life: fishermen, flowers, and yes, bulls captured in vibrant detail mere hours before the eruption. There's no warning, no sense of impending doom. It's as if the Minoans, like Plato's Atlanteans, were struck down in their prime, their story frozen in ash. Whether Santorini was Atlantis or merely its muse, the lesson remains. Even the most brilliant cultures are no match for nature's fury. And sometimes the line between history and myth is as thin as volcanic dust. High above the sands of Mauritania, the Richat structure stares like a giant eye from the sky, a haunting, circular formation so perfectly symmetrical it seems sculpted by human hand. Satellite images reveal concentric rings of rock spanning 25 miles, resembling Plato's description of Atlantis's capital with uncanny precision. Could this be the lost city, not sunk beneath the sea but buried under millennia of shifting desert? Proponents of the Richat theory argue that climate change transformed this region from lush greenery to barren wasteland, rewriting geography to hide Atlantis in plain sight. They point to Plato's mention of mountains north of the island and a fertile plain to the south, details that align eerily with the Richat's position between the Atlas Mountains and the Niger River's ancient floodplains. But geology tells a different story. The Richat isn't the ruins of a city. It's a natural dome worn down by erosion, its rings exposed like tree rings over 250 million years. No traces of walls, artifacts, or sudden destruction have been found there, just wind-blown sand and the occasional fossil. Studies confirm the structure predates human civilization by orders of magnitude, its formation a slow dance of uplift and weathering. Even the climate argument falters. While the Sahara was indeed greener 6,000 years ago, it never matched Plato's description of a naval superpower's homeland. The idea of Atlantis as a desert kingdom raises more questions than answers. Why would Plato, who placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic, relocate it to a landlocked region Greeks knew as part of Libya? The Richat's allure lies in its visual perfection, a Rorschach test for Atlantean dreamers. It's easy to project meaning onto its symmetry, just as ancient sailors saw gods in constellations. But the real mystery isn't whether the Richat is Atlantis. It's why we're so desperate to fit Plato's puzzle pieces onto every curious landscape. Perhaps the answer lies in the human mind's hunger for patterns, our instinct to turn chaos into narrative. The Richat doesn't need to be Atlantis to be awe-inspiring. Sometimes nature's artistry is enough. Could the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, buried under miles of ice, be the final resting place of Atlantis? It's one of the most audacious theories out there, the idea that Antarctica was once a temperate paradise, home to a flourishing civilization before a cataclysmic shift in the Earth's crust sent it spiraling into its current polar deep freeze. This wild hypothesis hinges on a fringe concept called crustal displacement, championed by figures like Charles Hapgood in the mid-20th century. Hapgood argued that the Earth's outer shell could suddenly slide over its molten core, rearranging continents in a geological instant. According to his theory, Antarctica might have sat in a far milder latitude thousands of years ago, its lush landscapes and advanced cities perfectly matching Plato's descriptions until disaster struck, flinging the continent southward and sealing Atlantis beneath ice and time. The allure of this idea is undeniable. Ancient maps like the Piri Reis chart, drawn in 1513, seem to depict an ice-free Antarctica with startling accuracy, coastlines that align with modern sonar readings of the landmass beneath the glaciers. Could these maps be based on older, now lost sources, preserving knowledge of Antarctica before it froze? Some researchers even point to the myth of Hyperborea, the Greek legend of a utopian land beyond the North Wind, suggesting it might be a garbled memory of a pre-glacial Antarctica. Then there's H.P. Lovecraft, whose horror novella At the Mountains of Madness took this concept and ran with it, describing an ancient alien city buried in the Antarctic wastes, complete with towering, non-Euclidean architecture. Lovecraft's fiction blurred the line between myth and speculation, embedding the idea of a lost Antarctic civilization deep in popular culture. But here's where the theory crumbles. Modern geology flatly rejects crustal displacement. Plate tectonics, the widely accepted model of Earth's crust, shows continents drifting gradually over millions of years, not lurching suddenly like a skidding car. Antarctica's ice sheets have been accumulating for at least 35 million years, long before humans walked the Earth. And while the Piri Reis map is fascinating, its accuracy is often exaggerated. It matches Antarctica's coastline only if you cherry-pick certain projections while ignoring glaring mismatches. As for Plato, he placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which pointed west into the Atlantic, not south toward the poles. Yet the Antarctica theory persists, fueled by our collective fascination with the unknown. The continent remains one of the last uncharted frontiers, its secrets locked under ice miles thick. Every so often, satellite images reveal strange, geometric shapes beneath the glaciers, sparking fresh waves of speculation, though scientists consistently attribute these to natural formations. Maybe that's the real power of Atlantis. It thrives in the gaps of our knowledge, a shape-shifting legend that adapts to every new discovery. Whether Antarctic wasteland or sunken metropolis, Atlantis endures not because we've found it, but because we haven't. And in that mystery, anything still seems possible. Midway between Europe and North America, the Azores archipelago rises from the depths of the Atlantic, a cluster of volcanic islands straddling the mid-Atlantic ridge. Beneath these waters lies the Azores Plateau, a sprawling underwater mesa larger than Portugal itself. For decades, this remote region has tantalized Atlantis hunters with sonar blips and vague shapes that some claim could be the ruins of Plato's lost city. In 2013, a team of marine archaeologists made headlines when they reported finding what appeared to be a massive, man-made structure near the Azores underwater Mount Banco de João de Castro. Sonar images revealed a symmetrical grid of lines intersecting at right angles, eerily reminiscent of urban streets. Could these be the sunken plazas and temples of Atlantis? Geologists quickly poured cold water on the excitement. The grid, they explained, was a textbook example of jointed basaltic rock, a natural formation where lava cools and fractures into geometric patterns. Similar formations appear worldwide, from Ireland's Giant's Causeway to California's Devil's Postpile. Without artifacts, inscriptions, or signs of human alteration, the Azores anomalies remain geological curiosities, not proof of a lost civilization. But the allure didn't fade. Ancient maps added fuel to the fire. The Piri Reis chart, drawn in 1513, shows islands in the central Atlantic where none exist today. Some theorists argue these could be misplaced renderings of the Azores or even Atlantis itself. Even more intriguing is the Catalan Atlas of 1375, which depicts an island called Antillia west of Portugal, labeled with a note about the island where 7 bishops fled from the Moors. Over centuries, Antillia's legend merged with Atlantis lore, creating a chimera of myth and wishful thinking. The Azores' volcanic origins complicate the picture. The plateau formed along the tectonically active mid-Atlantic ridge, where magma constantly reshapes the seafloor. Any ruins older than a few thousand years would likely be buried under layers of sediment or obliterated by eruptions. Yet the island's history holds tantalizing crumbs. Roman coins and Carthaginian artifacts unearthed on the Azores suggest ancient seafarers might have reached these remote islands long before the Portuguese officially. discovered them in 1427. Could earlier explorers have encountered ruins or oral traditions that later inspired Plato? The deeper mystery isn't just about rocks or sonar glitches, it's about why certain places ignite our imagination. The Azores sit atop the Atlantis like landmass of Doggerland, a real submerged territory that once connected Britain to Europe. Our minds gravitate toward symmetry and patterns, turning fractured lava into city grids and vague maps into blueprints. The Azores Plateau may not hold Atlantis's ruins, but it's a reminder that the ocean guards its secrets fiercely. For every sonar anomaly dismissed as geology, there's a whisper: what if we just haven't looked deep enough? The Atlantic's abyss keeps its stories close, leaving us to wonder what else might lie beneath the waves, waiting for the right moment or the right technology to reveal itself. What if Atlantis didn't sink but was smashed from the sky? One of the most explosive theories about the lost civilization's fate points to a cosmic catastrophe. A comet or asteroid strike so violent it could have vaporized entire cities and plunged the world into a mini ice age. This idea isn't pure speculation. It's rooted in a controversial but compelling hypothesis called the Younger Dryas impact theory, which suggests Earth was struck by fragments of a disintegrating comet around 12,800 years ago, astonishingly close to Plato's timeline for Atlantis's destruction. The evidence: layers of sediment packed with microscopic diamonds, melted glass, and iridium materials typically found at meteorite impact sites. These impact proxies span 4 continents, hinting at a global cataclysm. Could this event have been the hammer blow that silenced Atlantis forever? The parallels are chilling. Plato described Atlantis's end as a firestorm of earthquakes and floods, an apt depiction of a comet strike's aftermath. The heat of atmospheric entry alone would have ignited wildfires across continents, while tsunamis hundreds of feet high could have swallowed coastal cities whole. But the real horror might have come later. The Younger Dryas period, named after a hardy Arctic flower that thrived in the sudden cold, saw temperatures plummet for over 1,000 years. Some scientists argue this nuclear winter was triggered by impact debris blotting out the sun. Imagine crops failing worldwide, civilizations collapsing in hunger and chaos. Exactly the kind of reset Plato's story implies. This isn't just modern guesswork. Ancient myths worldwide tell eerily similar tales. The Norse spoke of Fimbulwinter, 3 years of endless cold heralding the apocalypse. Greek legend describes Phaeton, son of the sun god, losing control of his father's chariot and scorching earth until Zeus smote him from the sky, a possible allegory for a comet's fiery descent. Even the Hopi have stories of a sky demon whose death brought global freezing. These stories span oceans and cultures, yet share a common thread. Something fell from the heavens and nothing was the same after. The controversy lies in the details. Mainstream archaeology disputes the Younger Dryas impact, arguing the evidence could stem from wildfires or volcanic activity. But proponents counter with a smoking gun: sediment layers from Syria to South America containing nanodiamonds forged under extreme pressure, the kind only an impact could produce. If they're right, the implications are staggering. Not only would this explain Atlantis's sudden erasure, but it could rewrite our understanding of early human history. The comet's arrival coincides with the extinction of mammoths, saber-tooths, and North America's Clovis culture, a die-off so abrupt it's puzzled scientists for decades. Could Atlantis have been a casualty of this cosmic reckoning? The idea tantalizes because it bridges myth and geology, giving Plato's tale a physical anchor. It also offers a grim lesson that even the mightiest civilizations are at the mercy of forces beyond their control. Whether Atlantis was real or not, the comet theory reminds us that the sky has rewritten human destiny before. And if the stars once sent a warning, it's one we do well to remember. The Eye of the Sahara, also known as the Richat structure, has reignited debates among Atlantis researchers, but this time with a twist. Recent satellite imaging and geological surveys have uncovered something startling: the remnants of ancient riverbeds snaking through the Mauritanian desert, their paths aligning suspiciously well with Plato's description of Atlantis's waterways. These long, dry channels, now visible only through advanced remote sensing, hint at a time when this part of the Sahara wasn't a desert at all, but a lush, water-rich landscape. Could these be the veins of the lost city's irrigation system, the very same canals Plato claimed circled the city like the rings of a target? Geologists remain sharply divided. Some, like Dr. Mitchell J. Brack of the University of Quebec, argue the Richat's concentric rings are purely natural, the result of a volcanic dome collapsing and eroding over hundreds of millions of years. What you're seeing is geological poetry, not ruins, he insists, yet others, including independent researcher Jimmy Bright, counter that the structure's symmetry is too perfect to dismiss. Bright's team points to anomalous magnetic readings near the Richat's center, suggesting possible buried metals echoing Plato's tales of Atlantis's mineral-rich mountains. Even more intriguing, fossilized shells and marine sediments found in the region, remnants of a time when this part of Africa lay beneath a shallow sea. Archaeologists enter the fray with their own contradictions. Dr. Sophia Andrade, a specialist in Saharan prehistory, notes that while the Richat shows no signs of large-scale human construction, nearby caves house Neolithic rock art depicting boats and marine life, odd imagery for a people supposedly living deep in the desert. Could these artists have been preserving ancestral memories of a lost coastal homeland? Meanwhile, skeptics like Dr. Henry Kessler of Oxford dismiss such connections as pattern-seeking run amok. The Sahara's climate has shifted multiple times, he explains. Finding shells or old rivers proves nothing about Atlantis, only that environments change. The most tantalizing clue might lie in elevation. Plato wrote that Atlantis's capital stood on a coastal plain, backed by mountains to the north. The Richat sits exactly this way, with the Adrar Plateau looming to its north and the vast, now dry Taoudeni Basin stretching south. Even the dimensions are uncanny. Plato described the city's central island as 5 stades about 3,000 feet in diameter. The Richat's inner ring measures 3,600 feet. Coincidence, perhaps, but when you add the riverbeds, the fossils, and the eerie symmetry, the Richat becomes more than just a geological oddity. It becomes a Rorschach test for Atlantologists. So is the eye of the Sahara Atlantis. Science says no, but the heart of the mystery isn't just about rocks and rivers, it's about why we keep looking. The Richat, like Plato's story, offers a mirror to some. It reflects a lost golden age; to others, the human hunger for meaning in the random. Either way, the debate forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The past is far stranger than we imagine, and the line between fact and fable is thinner than the Sahara's shifting sands. Among the fragile 2,000-year-old Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in desert caves near Qumran, one stands out for its baffling contents: the Copper Scroll. Unlike its religious counterparts inscribed on parchment, this odd document was etched onto thin sheets of corroded metal, listing 64 locations where staggering amounts of gold, silver, and sacred artifacts were supposedly hidden. But it's entry number 32 that sends chills down the spines of Atlantis hunters, a mention of treasure concealed in the ruins of the sunken city. Could this be a veiled reference to Plato's lost civilization, a tangible clue buried in Judean desert dust? Mainstream scholars dismiss the connection outright. The Copper Scroll, they argue, almost certainly describes caches from Jerusalem's Second Temple, hidden during the Roman siege in 70 CE. The sunken city likely symbolizes Jerusalem's destruction, a metaphorical drowning in blood and fire rather than literal submersion. After all, the scroll's other locations reference real sites in the Judean wilderness, from the Valley of Achor to the pools near Jericho. Even the scroll's peculiar material makes sense in this context. Copper was durable enough to survive wartime chaos, a practical choice for preserving a treasure map meant to outlast empires, yet the allure of alternative theories persists. The scroll's cryptic phrasing, "the sunken city near the Pillar of Zadok," doesn't neatly match Jerusalem's geography. Some theorists suggest Zadok refers not to the biblical priestly line but to an older, forgotten landmark, perhaps near the Mediterranean coast where cities like Atlantean now lie submerged off Israel's shore. This Neolithic settlement, drowned by rising seas 6,000 years before the Copper Scroll was written, proves that sunken cities weren't just poetic metaphors in the ancient world. Could Jewish oral traditions have preserved memories of such places, blending them with later temple lore? The treasure list itself fuels speculation. Among gold talents and silver bars, the scroll mentions vessels of the house of the Lord and scrolls of copper and bronze, items eerily reminiscent of Plato's description of Atlantis's temple artifacts. The parallels are thin but tantalizing. More provocative still is the scroll's insistence that these treasures were concealed before the wrath, a phrase echoing Atlantis's divine punishment. Could Jewish scribes have adapted elements of Greek or Egyptian flood myths, weaving them into their own narratives of sacred preservation? Ultimately, the Copper Scroll's mystery lingers because it straddles two worlds, the historical and the mythic. No one has ever found its treasures despite centuries of searching. Maybe they were looted long ago, or maybe, like Atlantis itself, they remain just out of reach, hidden not in desert caves or beneath the waves, but in the shadowy borderland between fact and legend, waiting for someone to decipher the code. The idea of Atlantis harnessing the power of giant crystals didn't come from Plato. It erupted from the psychedelic fringe of the 1970s, where mystics and channelers wove sci-fi visions into ancient myth. This electrifying twist, that Atlanteans stored cosmic energy in towering crystalline structures, has since become a staple of New Age lore, inspiring everything from healing workshops to Hollywood blockbusters. But how did a civilization Plato described as Bronze Age warriors suddenly acquire crystal-fueled super technology in the modern imagination? The answer lies in the trance-induced ramblings of Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet, whose visions of Atlantis included elaborate crystal chambers that could focus the rays of the sun to power flying machines and heal the sick. His followers didn't just take notes, they built an entire cosmology around these ideas, claiming remnants of Atlantean crystal tech lay buried near Bimini or beneath the Arkansas Ozarks. The leap from Cayce's psychic readings to mainstream pop culture was surprisingly swift. By the 1980s, crystal energy theories had merged with the burgeoning New Age movement, where quartz clusters were marketed as both spiritual talismans and relics of lost Atlantean science. Workshops promised to teach initiates how to reactivate their inner Atlantean DNA through crystal meditation, while books like The Crystal Connection framed these minerals as fragments of a global prehistoric power grid. The mythos grew so pervasive that even scientists found themselves debunking claims that the Great Pyramid housed a giant crystal oscillator, an idea straight out of Cayce's playbook. Hollywood eagerly amplified the fantasy. Disney's Atlantis, the Lost Empire, didn't just borrow Cayce's crystal tropes, it turbocharged them, depicting a glowing blue heart of Atlantis that could vaporize enemies and levitate entire cities. The film's writers openly admitted drawing from New Age texts, blending them with pulp adventure tropes. Even superhero comics got in on the act. Marvel's Namor the Submariner wielded Atlantean crystal weapons, while DC's Aquaman inherited a throne room lit by luminous geodes. These stories shared a common thread. Crystals weren't just tools but symbols of Atlantis's dual nature, representing both its enlightened wisdom and its catastrophic hubris. Science, of course, tells a different story. No archaeological evidence supports the existence of advanced crystal technology in the ancient world. The closest real-world parallel might be the legendary Lycurgus cup, a 4th century Roman goblet that changes color under light due to nanoparticles, a far cry from laser cannons or anti-gravity devices. And while quartz crystals do have piezoelectric properties, they generate electric charge under pressure. Modern applications like watches and radios rely on precision engineering impossible with Bronze Age tools. Yet the crystal myth endures because it taps into something deeper than fact, a yearning for lost golden ages where magic and science were one. In a world grappling with climate crises and AI ethics, Atlantis's crystals offer a seductive what if, a vision of clean, boundless energy harnessed without consequence. The irony, Plato's original warning was about the dangers of unchecked power. Today, as tech billionaires fund crystal-infused, energy-healing startups, the line between ancient allegory and modern delusion feels thinner than ever. Maybe the real Atlantis isn't a sunken city, but the stories we tell ourselves about progress and the glittering illusions we mistake for truth. Could the descendants of Atlantis walk among us today? Some genetic researchers have made stunning claims about isolated populations in Europe and North Africa, groups like the Basques of Spain and France or the Berbers of the Sahara carrying DNA markers they argue could trace back to the lost civilization. The theory hinges on unusual genetic patterns found in these groups, particularly high frequencies of haplogroup R1b in the Basques and haplogroup EM81 in Berber communities. These markers, some suggest, might be remnants of an ancient, advanced seafaring culture that spread its genes before vanishing beneath the waves. But before we start rewriting history books, let's unpack the science and the sensationalism. The Basque connection first gained traction due to their mysterious language, Euskara, which shares no known roots with any other living tongue. Combined with their distinct genetic profile, some speculated the Basques were the last survivors of Atlantis, preserving fragments of a lost linguistic and biological heritage. Similarly, the Berbers, with their deep-rooted oral traditions of a great flood and maritime ancestors, seemed like another potential link. Genetic studies showed certain Berber subgroups carried EM81 at rates far higher than neighboring populations, leading theorists to propose they descended from Atlantean refugees who fled inland after the Cataclysm. On the surface, it's a compelling narrative except for one glaring problem. Genetics doesn't work like that. Mainstream geneticists roll their eyes at these claims, and for good reason. Haplogroups like R1b and EM81 aren't time-stamped passports to a specific civilization. They're broad branches on humanity's family tree, shaped by millennia of migration, isolation, and random drift. R1b, for example, is common across Western Europe because it spread with early farmers and later Bronze Age migrations, not because of a single advanced society. The Berbers' EM81 likely arose from local population dynamics in North Africa over the last few thousand years. There's no genetic smoking gun connecting these groups to a hypothetical super-civilization. Worse, many of these Atlantean DNA theories rely on cherry-picked data, ignoring studies that contradict their conclusions. The real danger here isn't just bad science, it's the distortion of cultural identity. The Basque and Berber peoples have rich, documented histories that don't need Atlantis to be fascinating. Reducing their heritage to speculative gene theories risks overshadowing their actual achievements, from the Berbers' resistance against Roman conquest to the Basques' medieval naval prowess. It also plays into a tired trope, the idea that isolated or different groups must owe their uniqueness to some external, often mythical force. Perhaps the most telling flaw in these genetic claims is their timing. Plato's Atlantis supposedly fell 11,000 years ago, but the haplogroups in question didn't exist in their current forms until millennia later. Even if we accept that Atlantis was real, its hypothetical survivors wouldn't have carried these precise genetic markers unless we're to believe their DNA somehow paused its evolution for thousands of years before suddenly resurfacing. The math simply doesn't add up. That hasn't stopped the myth from spreading. Books and documentaries touting Atlantean DNA often bypass peer review entirely, appealing directly to public fascination. One infamous study published on a fringe website claimed to have found Atlantean markers in Canary Islander mummies, only for geneticists to debunk it as a mishmash of mislabeled data and wild assumptions. Another viral article insisted Basque DNA contained unknown sequences, later revealed to be common variants with perfectly ordinary explanations. So where does this leave us? Genetics is a powerful tool for uncovering human history, but it's not a magic wand. The search for Atlantis in our DNA says more about our own desires to find validation in biology, to feel connected to a grander past, than it does about actual science. The Basques and Berbers don't need Atlantis to be extraordinary. Their real stories, written in their languages, traditions, and yes, their genes, are remarkable enough without sinking them into the murky depths of pseudo-history. The mysterious sea peoples who terrorized the Bronze Age Mediterranean are one of history's great unsolved puzzles, and they might hold the key to untangling Atlantis's militaristic legacy. Around 1200 BC, waves of marauders swept across the ancient world, sacking cities from Troy to Gaza, toppling empires like the Hittites and even threatening Egypt itself. Pharaoh Ramses III immortalized his victory over them in temple carvings, depicting strange warriors with horned helmets and feather-topped ships, fighters so relentless they left no written records of their own, only the scars of their destruction. Their origins remain hotly debated, but one theory ties them directly to Plato's Atlantis. Were these enigmatic raiders the real-world inspiration for his imperial aggressors? The parallels are hard to dismiss. Like Atlantis, the Sea Peoples emerged seemingly from nowhere, a naval superpower striking without warning. Egyptian records describe them as a coalition of tribes: the Sherden, the Lucca, the Peliset, names that echo the 10 Atlantean kings Plato claimed ruled in tandem. Some scholars argue these invaders weren't barbarians but displaced elites, victims of famine or seismic disasters lashing out in desperation. This aligns eerily with Plato's timeline. Atlantis's downfall coincided with the Bronze Age collapse, a period of climate chaos, earthquakes, and mass migrations. Could the Sea Peoples have been Atlantean survivors, their homeland swallowed by the sea, now roaming as desperate conquerors? But the theory frays under scrutiny. Plato placed Atlantis's war with Athens 9,000 years before his time, while the Sea Peoples' rampage occurred just 12 centuries prior. That gap is too vast even for oral tradition to bridge. Unless, of course, Plato was doing what storytellers do: condensing, conflating, weaving threads of real history into mythic tapestry. The Sherden, for instance, wore distinctive horned helmets and carried round shields, matching artistic depictions of Atlantean warriors in later Greek art. The Lucca, known as fierce pirates from Anatolia, could have morphed into Plato's allegory of naval tyranny. By blending these historical threats into a single, ancient foe, Plato might have crafted a cautionary tale with the visceral punch of recent memory. There's another twist. The Sea Peoples' aftermath reshaped the Mediterranean in ways that resonate with Atlantis's allegorical role. Their invasions didn't just destroy, they cleared the way for new powers like the Philistines and Phoenicians, much like Plato's Athens rose from Atlantis's ashes. This cyclical view of history, catastrophe birthing renewal, was central to Greek thought. The real mystery isn't whether Atlantis and the Sea Peoples were the same, but why we're so compelled to link them. Perhaps because both represent civilization's fragile veneer, how quickly order can dissolve into chaos. The Sea Peoples remind us that even the mightiest empires are just one bad harvest, one failed battle, away from becoming the next Atlantis, a name whispered in ruins, a warning etched in stone. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, has fueled decades of speculation about Atlantis, and for good reason. This fragile parchment, discovered in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace in 1929, depicts coastlines with uncanny precision, including what some claim is an ice-free Antarctica. Conspiracy theorists argue this proves the existence of an ancient, advanced civilization like Atlantis, whose cartographers supposedly mapped the world before the last ice age. But let's unravel the reality. The map's accuracy is often overstated. While it does show parts of South America and West Africa with surprising detail, its so-called Antarctica is actually a distorted version of the southern continent's northern edge, likely pieced together from Portuguese and Arab nautical charts. The ice-free features, they could easily represent artistic license or misinterpreted geographic rumors, not proof of prehistoric satellite imagery. Then there are the Dropa stones, a far more obscure but equally misused artifact. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist claimed to have discovered 12,000-year-old stone discs in the Bayan Karaula Mountains, etched with tiny hieroglyphs telling of crashed spacecraft and alien visitors. Over time, fringe theorists grafted these discs onto Atlantis lore, suggesting they were Atlantean data storage devices or messages from survivors. The truth is far less cinematic. No credible scholar outside conspiracy circles has verified the stone's existence, and the original discoverer has been linked to hoaxes. The few photos that surface online are likely Neolithic ritual objects with mundane purposes. Their extraterrestrial backstory invented whole cloth by 20th century sensationalists. Why do these dubious artifacts keep getting tied to Atlantis? Part of the answer lies in our hunger for validation, the desire to hold physical proof that Plato's story was real. The Piri Reis map and Dropa stones offer tantalizing what-ifs, gateways to a past more mysterious than textbooks allow. But the darker truth is that many of these theories stem from outdated or racist pseudoscience. The idea that indigenous peoples couldn't have created sophisticated maps or artifacts on their own led early Atlantis hunters to credit a mythical white civilization instead. Modern archaeology dismantles these assumptions, revealing how Polynesian navigators crossed oceans using star charts, or how the Inca recorded data in knotted quipu strings, technologies just as advanced as anything Atlantis supposedly possessed. The real forbidden history here isn't buried in ancient maps or alien stones, it's the way we project our biases onto the past. Atlantis has become a mirror, reflecting whatever its seekers want to see. Proof of alien contact, evidence of lost super technology, even justification for discredited ideologies. The Piri Reis map is a masterpiece of medieval cartography, not a puzzle to force fit into Plato's dialogue. The Dropa stones, if they exist at all, are artifacts of human ingenuity, not extraterrestrial handouts. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't whether these objects prove Atlantis was real, but why we're so desperate for them to. In chasing shadows, we risk missing the genuine marvels right in front of us, the real, documentable wonders of human history that need no myth to be extraordinary. What if Atlantis wasn't swallowed by the sea but hidden beneath our feet? The hollow earth theory takes Plato's lost civilization and plunges it into the realm of subterranean fantasy, weaving together polar expeditions, occult obsession, and pulpy science fiction. One of the most bizarre twists in Atlantis lore suggests the island didn't vanish into the ocean depths, but retreated into a vast, uncharted world inside the earth, a land of eternal sun, advanced beings, and glowing cities. This idea didn't spring from ancient texts, but from a feverish blend of 19th century imagination and 20th century conspiracy. At the heart of the theory lies Admiral Richard Byard, the American explorer whose alleged 1947 flight over the North Pole spawned rumors of a secret diary. According to fringe claims, Byard's log described flying into a warm, green paradise beyond the ice, a place with mammoth-like creatures and golden-domed metropolises, ruled by a race of enlightened superhumans. Conspiracy theorists insist this was Agartha, the legendary underground kingdom tied to Atlantis by esoteric traditions. Never mind that Bayard's official records mention no such thing, or that physicists dismiss the hollow Earth as impossible given Earth's density and gravity. The allure of hidden worlds is too strong to resist. The Nazis gave the myth a sinister edge. Heinrich Himmler's Onanab division, obsessed with proving Aryan supremacy through occult archaeology, funded expeditions to Tibet and Antarctica in search of entrances to the hollow Earth. Some claim they found one, a network of tunnels beneath New Schwabenland, a contested Antarctic territory mapped by Germany in 1938. These rumors gained traction when post-war UFO sightings were bizarrely linked to Nazi saucers, allegedly built with reverse-engineered Atlantean tech salvaged from underground. The leap from history to fantasy is staggering, but it reveals how Atlantis became a blank slate for ideological fantasies. Jules Verne's journey to the center of the Earth didn't invent hollow Earth lore, but it seared it into popular consciousness. His 1864 novel depicted a hidden ocean and prehistoric creatures beneath Iceland's volcanoes, a vision that, while fictional, drew from real scientific debates of the era. Figures like astronomer Edmund Halley had speculated about inner worlds in the 1700s, and theosophist Helena Blavatsky later claimed Agartha housed the root race that birthed Atlantis. Verne's tale bridged these ideas, making subterranean civilizations feel tantalizingly plausible. The fatal flaw in all this: geology. Seismic studies show Earth's interior is molten rock and metal, not echoing caverns. Yet the myth persists, buoyed by internet-era fantastics and the enduring appeal of what if. Maybe it's because the hollow Earth, like Atlantis itself, represents the ultimate escape, a place where history's losses are undone, where grand civilizations thrive untouched by time. Or maybe it's simpler: we just love a good story, especially one that insists the world is stranger than it seems. Either way, the theory proves Atlantis isn't just a place, it's an idea, endlessly adaptable, forever slipping just out of reach. Could Atlantis have been not just a lost civilization, but a lost extraterrestrial colony? This electrifying theory took root in the mid-20th century, fueled by ancient astronaut proponents who saw humanity's past as a puzzle missing otherworldly pieces. At the heart of the claim lies a radical reinterpretation of Plato's story. What if the gods who gifted Atlantis its advanced technology weren't deities at all, but visitors from the stars? Proponents point to global anomalies like Peru's Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs only fully visible from the air, as potential landing strips or signals for spacecraft. They argue structures like the pyramids of Giza or Bolivia's Puma Punku, with their precision-cut stonework, defy Bronze Age capabilities, evidence of alien knowledge passed to Atlantean chosen ones. Even Plato's description of Atlantis's destruction takes on a sci-fi twist. The fiery cataclysm could mirror a nuclear meltdown or the detonation of an alien power source gone awry. The ancient astronaut narrative gained traction with figures like Erich von Däniken, whose 1968 book Chariots of the Gods reframed global myths as misunderstood encounters with extraterrestrials. He interpreted Atlantis's sudden disappearance as an alien evacuation, its survivors seeding advanced knowledge across Egypt and the Americas. Later theorists like Giorgio Tsoukalos of Ancient Aliens fame expanded the idea, suggesting Atlanteans were hybrid beings, part human, part extraterrestrial, whose genetic legacy explains sudden leaps in human evolution. The Dogon people of Mali, for instance, have oral traditions about the Sirius star system that accurately describe its invisible companion star, a fact only confirmed by modern telescopes. To believers, such impossible knowledge hints at Atlantean and thus alien tutelage, but let's apply Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually correct. Could the Nazca lines, instead of being alien runways, be ritual pathways for ceremonial processions, as many archaeologists propose? The pyramid's construction, while awe-inspiring, aligns with known techniques like ramp systems and copper tools as demonstrated in experiments. And Plato's dialogues, read in context, align with Greek philosophical traditions using allegory to explore ethics, not documentary accounts of interstellar contact. Cultural anthropologists add another layer. Human societies independently develop similar solutions to shared challenges like monument building without needing extraterrestrial intervention. The Incas' mortar-free stonework or the Mesopotamians' ziggurats aren't proof of alien blueprints. They're testaments to human ingenuity. Perhaps the most telling flaw in the alien Atlantis theory is its Eurocentric bias. By attributing non-Western achievements to outside forces, whether Atlantean or extraterrestrial, it inadvertently dismisses the brilliance of indigenous cultures. The Maya calculated Venus's orbit with stunning accuracy. The Polynesians navigated vast oceans by starlight alone. These weren't gifts from Atlantis or aliens, but hard-won knowledge honed over generations. The real mystery isn't how primitive people built wonders, but why we're so quick to assume they couldn't have. Yet the alien hypothesis endures because it taps into a deeper existential itch, the longing for cosmic kinship. If Atlantis was an alien colony, it suggests we're not alone, that our story is part of something grander. It's a seductive thought, but it also risks reducing humanity's or inspiring achievements to hand-me-downs from the stars. The truth may be less flashy but far more profound. From the Sahara to the Andes, our ancestors built legacies that continue to baffle and inspire, not because they had help from above, but because they reached together for the extraordinary. Atlantis, real or imagined, stands as a mirror. Whether we see gods, aliens, or ourselves in its reflection says more about us than about the past. Plato's account of Atlantis sinking beneath the waves doesn't stand alone. It's part of a chorus of flood stories echoing across continents and centuries. From the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical tale of Noah, from the Hindu Matsya Purana to the indigenous Australian Dreamtime legends, over 500 cultures have preserved some version of a cataclysmic deluge wiping the slate clean. The similarities are uncanny: divine warnings, chosen survivors, and a world reborn from the waters. This raises a tantalizing question. Are these stories just universal archetypes, or could they be fractured memories of real events? The timing is suspiciously precise. Many flood myths, like Plato's, reference a disaster around 11,000 years ago, the tail end of the last ice age, when melting glaciers triggered sea level rises of over 300 feet. Coastlines that had been stable for millennia were swallowed in generations, drowning settlements from the North Sea's Doggerland to the Persian Gulf's fertile plains. For hunter-gatherers living near rising waters, the trauma would have been unforgettable. Oral traditions could have compressed these gradual changes into single, apocalyptic nights, transformations so vast they felt like acts of God. Take the K.H. Myers Popol Vuh, which describes a great flood sent to destroy wooden mannequins, leaving only a handful to repopulate the earth, or the Sumerian Eridu Genesis, where the god Enlil unleashes waters to silence humanity's noise, sparing only Ziusadra's ark. Even distant cultures like the Chinese, with the legend of Gunyu, speak of a flood so immense it required decades of dredging to control. The consistency is staggering, not in the details but in the emotional core. Water as both purifier and punisher, a force that resets the world. But skeptics push back. Carl Jung argued flood myths stem from humanity's collective unconscious, with water symbolizing the subconscious itself, chaotic, primal, and inescapable. In this view, Atlantis isn't a place but a psychological echo, a shared nightmare of vulnerability. Others note that flood-prone regions naturally spawn such stories, civilizations built along rivers like the Nile or the Tigris would experience cyclical devastation, weaving trauma into cosmology. The flood isn't memory but metaphor, a way to explain suffering through narrative. Yet geology offers a middle ground. Core samples from the Black Sea reveal a catastrophic inundation around 7,600 years ago, when rising Mediterranean waters burst through the Bosporus Strait, submerging a freshwater lake the size of Costa Rica in months. This event aligns with flood myths in the region, like the Babylonian Atrahasis. Similarly, Australia's Gulf country holds indigenous stories of coastlines drowning, precisely matching post-Ice Age sea level curves. These aren't Jungian symbols but local histories passed down for millennia with startling accuracy. The most haunting possibility, that Atlantis represents a fusion of both, a real disaster wrapped in mythic meaning. When Plato's Egyptian priest speaks of the great deluge that erased Atlantis, he might be stitching together half-remembered collapses: Thera's eruption, Doggerland's drowning, and the Black Sea's breach. The flood isn't just water, it's time itself swallowing the past until only stories remain. Whether archetype or heirloom, these tales remind us that every civilization builds on borrowed land and the tide always comes back. Among all the theories surrounding Atlantis, one of the most provocative comes not from treasure hunters or mystics, but from ivory tower academics: the idea that Plato never intended Atlantis to be real. According to this school of thought, the lost city was pure allegory, a fictional parable crafted to critique Athenian politics and morality. Scholars like Julia Annas and Christopher Gill argue that Plato, the master philosopher, was doing what he did best, using storytelling to explore deeper truths about power, corruption, and the ideal state. After all, this was the man who gave us the cave and the ring of Gyges. Why would Atlantis be any different? The timing of Plato's Atlantis story is telling. He wrote it in his later years, around 360 B.C., a period when Athens was reeling from military defeat and democratic decay. His dialogues Timaeus and Critias frame Atlantis as a cautionary contrast to an idealized Athens, one that resisted Atlantean aggression through virtue alone. But here's the rub: no historical record outside Plato mentions this epic conflict. No ruins, no inscriptions, no oral traditions. If Athens had truly defeated a global superpower, wouldn't someone else have written it down? Unless, of course, the entire tale was a rhetorical device, a noble lie designed to inspire civic pride. This wouldn't be out of character for Plato. In the Republic, he famously advocated for noble lies, myths told to maintain social order, like the idea that citizens are born with metals in their souls dictating their class. Atlantis could serve a similar function, a glittering example of what happens when societies prioritize wealth over wisdom. The parallels to 4th century Athens are striking. Just as Atlantis's kings grew corrupt, so had Athens' leaders, embroiled in scandals and failed wars. By setting the story 9,000 years in the past, Plato gave it the weight of ancient wisdom, free from contemporary rebuttals. Yet there's a twist. Even if Atlantis was allegory, Plato may have woven in kernels of truth. His descriptions of concentric cities and naval warfare mirror real Bronze Age innovations, suggesting he borrowed from history to ground his fable. The volcanic eruption at Santorini, for instance, was still within living memory via oral tradition. Could Plato have repurposed half-remembered disasters to lend his story visceral impact? The balance between fact and fiction in his work is deliberate, a way to make philosophical abstractions feel urgent and real. This duality is what makes the hoax theory so compelling. It doesn't reduce Atlantis to mere fantasy, but recognizes Plato's genius in blurring the lines. For him, the power of a story wasn't in its literal truth, but in its ability to shape behavior. Atlantis wasn't just a sunken city, it was a mirror held up to Athens, a warning of what happens when ambition outpaces ethics. Whether as myth or history, that warning still resonates not because the stones of Atlantis have been found, but because its lesson remains eternally human. From Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to the blockbuster Aquaman, Atlantis has splashed across pop culture in waves, morphing from Plato's philosophical allegory into a cinematic shorthand for mystery and grandeur. Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, reimagined it as a steampunk utopia powered by glowing crystals, while Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis turned its ruins into a playground of Nazi-punching archaeology. Even video games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey let players dive into a sunken rendition, complete with crumbling columns and holographic ghosts. But why does this ancient myth keep resurfacing in modern storytelling? The answer lies in its dual nature, a cautionary tale about hubris and a blank canvas for our wildest fantasies. Consider how each era reshapes Atlantis to mirror its own obsessions. The Victorian era, enamored with exploration and imperialism, cast it as a lost colony waiting to be reclaimed. Think H. Rider Haggard's She, where Atlantis becomes just another exotic prize for British adventurers. Fast forward to the Cold War, and pulp comics like Aquaman reframed it as a submerged superpower, its advanced technology a metaphor for nuclear anxiety. Today's climate-conscious retellings like Avatar, The Way of Water, repurpose Atlantis's drowning as an eco-parable, its fate a warning about rising seas. The city's legend bends but never breaks, adapting to whatever anxieties or aspirations we project onto it. The real magic of Atlantis, though, isn't just its flexibility, it's the emotional resonance of a golden age lost. From Tolkien's drowned Numenor to Marvel's underwater Wakanda, the trope of a fallen utopia taps into something primal, the longing for a time when humanity was wiser, nobler, more connected to magic or technology beyond our grasp. We see it in the melancholic beauty of BioShock's Rapture, a failed Atlantis-style city where Art Deco halls rust under the sea, their grandeur a monument to broken dreams. These stories aren't just about the past, they're about our own fragility. Atlantis reminds us that even the brightest civilizations can vanish, leaving only echoes and what-ifs. Yet there's a thrilling contradiction at play. For all its tragic endings, Atlantis also symbolizes hope, the idea that forgotten knowledge might still be out there, waiting to be rediscovered. This duality fuels its endless reinvention. In National Treasure, it's a tantalizing clue in a founding father's conspiracy. In Stargate, it's an alien spaceship disguised as a myth. Each iteration asks the same question: what if we could reclaim what was lost? That tension between warning and wonder is why Atlantis endures. It's not just a city beneath the waves. It's the ultimate story machine, forever churning out new legends from the deep. The ocean floor remains Earth's last great frontier, and modern explorers continue to scour its depths for traces of Atlantis, armed with technology Plato couldn't have dreamed of. Among the most headline-grabbing searches was Paul Weinsweg and Pauline Zalitsky's 2001 sonar survey off Cuba's coast, which revealed symmetrical stone structures half a mile underwater. The media erupted. Were these the fabled pyramids of Atlantis? The formations, some measuring over 800 feet wide, appeared eerily geometric, like a sunken city's plazas and temples frozen in time. But when divers finally reached the site, reality proved murkier. Without clear carvings, artifacts, or datable materials, the pyramids could just as easily be unusual bedrock formations shaped by ancient tides or volcanic activity. It's a pattern repeated across countless expeditions. Tantalizing shapes on sonar dissolve into ambiguity up close, leaving more questions than answers. Then there's Robert Ballard, the legendary oceanographer who found the Titanic. In 2009, he led a team to search the Mediterranean for clues tied to Atlantis, focusing on sediment layers around Santorini that might hold evidence of a massive tsunami. His approach was methodical, tracking flood deposits and debris flows that could match Plato's Cataclysm. Yet even Ballard, with his deep-sea robots and submersibles, admitted the challenge. The ocean doesn't give up its secrets easily. The sheer scale of tectonic activity in the region means any potential ruins could be scattered across hundreds of miles or buried under millennia of silt. Unlike shipwrecks, which leave concentrated debris fields, a drowned civilization might leave only ghostly imprints, a pottery shard here, a strange mineral anomaly there, insufficient to declare proof. Why do these high-tech hunts keep falling short? Part of it boils down to the nature of archaeology itself. On land, digs can uncover entire neighborhoods preserved under ash or mud, like Pompeii or Çatalhöyük. Underwater, erosion and currents scatter evidence, while coral and marine life consume organic materials. Even if Atlantis's golden spires once gleamed beneath the waves after 11,000 years, they'd likely be reduced to unidentifiable mounds. Compounding the issue is funding. Most deep-sea missions rely on grants or private investors, limiting their scope. Ballard's Santorini search, for instance, lasted just weeks. Compare that to decades of excavation at terrestrial sites like Troy or Giza, where patience has slowly peeled back layers of history. Yet hope persists, fueled by advances in marine robotics and AI image analysis. Projects like the Ocean Exploration Trust now use autonomous drones to map the seabed in unprecedented detail, while machine learning algorithms sift through sonar data for unnatural patterns. In 2021, a team off Portugal's Azores Islands identified a submerged, monumental structure with stair-like features using these very tools. Skeptics dismissed it as another quirk of geology, but true believers countered. What if we're just one scan away from the breakthrough? The deeper truth is that the search for Atlantis isn't just about finding a city, it's about confronting the limits of our knowledge. Every expedition, whether it yields ruins or riddles, reminds us how little we understand our own planet's past. The ocean's abyss guards its mysteries fiercely, but that hasn't stopped explorers from daring to look. And perhaps that's the real legacy of Atlantis, not a sunken metropolis, but the unshakable human urge to keep diving deeper, armed with curiosity and the unspoken faith that somewhere in the dark, history is waiting to surface. The legend of Atlantis endures not because we've found it, but precisely because we haven't. There's something irresistible about a puzzle that refuses to be solved, a story that lingers just beyond the edges of proof. Is it the dream of a golden age we've lost, a time when humanity lived in harmony with advanced knowledge and divine favor? Or is it the darker thrill of recognizing our own fragility, the silent fear that our cities too could one day vanish beneath the waves? Atlantis taps into both our grandest aspirations and our deepest anxieties, a mirror held up to civilization itself. Think about the stories we tell when no one's looking. The Lost City isn't just Plato's invention, it's a recurring motif in cultures worldwide. The Aztecs spoke of Aztlan, the ancestral homeland swallowed by time. The Irish whispered of Tir na an Og, an island paradise hidden by mist. Even modern fiction can't resist the trope, from the drowned ruins of Bioshock's Rapture to the interstellar relics of Mass Effect's Protheans. These aren't just tales, they're psychological artifacts, revealing a universal human longing for connection to something greater than ourselves. Atlantis, in this light, becomes more than a place. It's a metaphor for the past we wish we could reclaim, or the future we're terrified of losing. But there's another layer to the obsession. Humans are hardwired for mystery. Our brains itch when faced with unanswered questions, which is why unsolved enigmas, from the Bermuda Triangle to Stonehenge, captivate generation after generation. Atlantis is the ultimate cold case, a blank space on the map where we're free to project our wildest theories. For scholars, it's a historical riddle begging for evidence. For mystics, it's a spiritual beacon of forgotten wisdom. For conspiracy theorists, it's proof that mainstream science is hiding the truth. The beauty of the legend lies in its elasticity. It bends to fit whatever narrative we need it to. Consider how differently eras have interpreted Atlantis. The Victorians saw it as a cautionary tale of imperial overreach, while the New Age movement reimagined it as a paradise of crystal healers and psychic energy. Today, in an age of climate crises, it's become a symbol of ecological hubris, a reminder that no civilization is immune to nature's wrath. The story survives because it's never just about the past, it's a vessel for our present fears and hopes. Every generation finds its own Atlantis, tailored to the anxieties of the moment. At its core, the mystery endures because it asks a question we still can't answer: how much of history is truly lost? The ocean guards its secrets fiercely, and every sonar blip or odd rock formation reignites the debate. Maybe that's the point. Atlantis isn't meant to be found, it's meant to keep us searching, to remind us that the world is wider and stranger than we know. The real treasure isn't a sunken city, but the wonder that drives us to keep diving, digging, and dreaming. After all, the greatest stories aren't those with endings, but those that leave us forever wondering. From the precision of Plato's measurements to the eerie symmetry of the Richat structure, from the volcanic fury of Santorini to the cosmic whispers of the younger Dryas' impact, each of these 30 details doesn't just add to the legend of Atlantis, it twists it, pulling us deeper into a labyrinth where history and myth refuse to untangle. The geological oddities, the ancient flood myths, the fragments of lost technology, even the genetic echoes in distant cultures, none of these pieces fit neatly together, yet they all point toward something. Whether that something is a real civilization swallowed by the sea or a collective human memory of catastrophe, the enigma only grows richer the closer we look. What's remarkable isn't just the scale of the mystery, but how it adapts. Every generation finds its own Atlantis, shaped by the tools and fears of the moment. For the Victorians, it was a cautionary tale of imperial decay. For the Cold War era, a warning about technological hubris. Today, it's a mirror held up to rising sea levels and the fragility of our own cities. The theories, whether placing Atlantis in Antarctica or beneath the Sahara, whether framing it as an alien colony or a philosophical allegory, aren't just wild guesses. They're attempts to reconcile Plato's puzzle with the shifting boundaries of our understanding, but the real magic lies in the searching. Whether you're tracing the steps of Ignatius Donnelly through dusty archives, diving the Azores Plateau with sonar scans, or standing on Santorini's cliffs imagining the day the sky turned to fire, the hunt for Atlantis is as much about the journey as the destination. Each site, each artifact, each half-buried clue invites you to look closer, to question what's been dismissed, and to wonder what might still be waiting in the shadows of history. So where does that leave us with a choice? You could dismiss Atlantis as a fairy tale, a metaphor that's outlived its usefulness. Or you could embrace the possibility that somewhere, beneath the silt or the ice or the desert sands, there's a truth stranger than Plato ever dreamed. But here's the final twist. If Atlantis is ever found, if some diver's light someday glints off a golden spire or some archaeologist's brush uncovers a tablet bearing its name, will it live up to the legend or shatter it? The greatest mysteries aren't just about answers, they're about how the search changes us, and Atlantis, real or not, has already reshaped the world. The question is, what will you see when you look into its depths?